So today we're going to dig into an analysis of two Connecticut bills. But here's the thing, this isn't really about the specifics of medicine. No. According to the source, these bills actually bring up a much bigger question about who really has power over our own bodies. Let's get into it. The entire way this analysis is framed, it all boils down to one single, really foundational question. The argument is that before we can even talk about the details of these bills, we have to face this fundamental issue of power and authority head on. And that question is this: who really holds the rightful authority over the human body, over our conscience, and over how we care for our kids? According to the source, two bills in Connecticut, HB 5044 and SB 450, are proposing a brand new answer, and it's one that could seriously shift the balance of power. Okay, so how exactly are these bills trying to make such a huge change? Well, the key, the real engine of it, is a mechanism that moves authority away from lawmakers and puts it squarely in the hands of the executive branch. Let me show you how it works. So what we're talking about here is a pretty big shift. We'd be moving away from the old way, stable rules set by lawmakers through a public process, and towards something much more fluid, a standard of care that's controlled by a single state agency. All right, so what in the world is a standard of care? The source defines it as a set of rules that gets posted on a website, and the health commissioner can just change it whenever they think it's needed. But here's the real kicker. It is not considered a formal regulation. That means it gets to bypass the whole public rulemaking process we're used to. And that brings us right back to the central point here. The source really wants to hammer this home. The real issue isn't what's in the standard. It's about the process itself. It's about who gets to decide and how they get to decide it. It's a fundamental change in how we're governed. Now, the argument goes that this new standard of care isn't just supposed to be some document living on a website. Oh no, it's designed to be the central hub, the very core of this interconnected system that would reach into schools, healthcare, even your insurance. Just look at how this plays out. First, the commissioner sets the standard. Then that standard gets plugged directly into K through 12 school rules, into college enrollment requirements, into what your insurance has to cover. And it even expands the power of pharmacists and the state's emergency powers. You see, it's like a domino effect. So the takeaway from the source is this. When you look at how widely the standard would be applied, you realize these aren't just small tweaks to the law. The argument is that these are basically architectural blueprints designed to build a whole new administrative machine. Okay, so if that's the new system on the table, what does it actually mean for our personal rights? The analysis gets right into that, focusing on these core rights that are, pretty central to the whole American idea. First up, bodily autonomy. The source starts from the principle that government exists to protect rights we already have. It doesn't get to manage people like they're state property. The argument here is that these bills kind of flip that on its head by starting with the assumption that the state has authority over your body. Next, you've got freedom of conscience. The analysis points to a specific part of one of the bills, SB 450, that actually tries to stop people from challenging the new rules based on religious freedom. And the argument is that treating conscience like it's just some inconvenient roadblock, well, that's completely backwards in a free society. And finally, we have parental rights. Think about it. School attendance is a huge deal for any family. So by tying it to an administrative standard that can be changed on a whim instead of a solid public law, the source claims these bills give the state a massive amount of leverage over parents. So when you pull all these different threads together, the source argues that what we're really looking at is a blueprint for a whole new way of doing government, especially when it comes to something as personal as our health. The source has a name for this: packaging. You see, a bill might be presented as just a simple budget thing, implementing the governor's recommendations. But the argument is that what it really does is completely restructure policy and power. It's a huge shift disguised as boring paperwork. So according to this analysis, this new model really has 4 key ingredients. First, it assumes the state has authority over your body. Second, it lets those standards be changed without going through the usual public process. Third, it pushes that state power deep into our daily lives. And fourth, it tries to shield it all from legal challenges based on religious freedom. And to wrap it all up, the source uses this really powerful metaphor to warn about where this could all lead. It argues that this new mechanism, this standard of care, it's not the final destination. It's an opening, it's a doorway to a totally different kind of relationship between you and the state. And what's behind that door? Well, according to this analysis, it's a future with more power concentrated in the executive branch, with less transparency, and with fewer ways for regular people to hold that power accountable. And that is the core warning of the source material. And so, this analysis leaves us with this final, pretty challenging question. It suggests that maybe we've been asking the wrong thing all along. Instead of asking, what can the state manage, maybe the first question we should always be asking is, what power did we, the people, actually give it in the first place?